I'm Heather Mitchell, 34, and I still can't believe what happened at our family Christmas gathering last year. Standing in my parents' living room, surrounded by the usual festive decorations, my father clinked his glass and announced, "We all decided there'd be no gifts this year." Except I hadn't been included in that decision. As my siblings avoided eye contact, I noticed shopping bags hidden behind the sofa gifts for everyone except me. That night revealed a 15-year family conspiracy I never saw coming, one that would ultimately cost my parents their retirement fund and change our family forever. I still remember the moment my heart dropped to my stomach that night. If you've ever felt betrayed by family, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Before I continue with this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If this family drama resonates with you already, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone in this experience. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about family karma and how I finally got justice after years of manipulation. Now, let me take you back to what I thought was the perfect family. Growing up in the Mitchell household, I always believed we were the ideal American family. My father, Richard, a respected high school principal, and my mother, Eleanor, a pediatric nurse, had raised 3 children in our comfortable suburban home in Massachusetts. Brandon, my older brother by 2 years, was the athletic golden boy. My younger sister Amanda, 3 years my junior, was the artistic one with her perpetual charm and effortless beauty. And then there was me, Heather, the responsible middle child who always did what was expected. As the middle child, I naturally fell into the role of mediator and responsible one. While Brandon was busy winning football games and breaking hearts, and Amanda was starring in school plays and collecting admirers, I was the one making sure homework got done, chores were completed, and family peace was maintained. I didn't mind this role. I took pride in being dependable, the steady force in our family dynamics. After college, I built a successful career as a financial advisor at a prestigious firm in Boston. My siblings' paths were more complicated. Brandon started 3 different businesses that each collapsed within a year, while Amanda bounced between acting aspirations, yoga instruction, and jewelry design, never quite finding her footing. Despite their unpredictable careers, they always seemed to maintain enviable lifestyles, something I never questioned until that fateful Christmas. Our family Christmas traditions had always seemed warm and loving. We would gather at my parents' home on Christmas Eve, exchange gifts on Christmas morning, and spend the day enjoying Mom's famous turkey dinner while watching holiday movies. These gatherings were sacred in our family calendar, and I treasured them as moments when we all came together despite our busy lives. What I didn't realize was how much financial support I had been providing to keep the family afloat. Over the years, I had lent substantial sums to both siblings, $15,000 to Brandon for his food truck venture, $10,000 to Amanda for her jewelry business startup, plus countless smaller loans that were never mentioned again. I'd also helped my parents with their property taxes twice when they claimed to be a little short this month. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. There were family get-togethers scheduled when I was away on business trips. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. Conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered a room. But I dismissed these moments, too trusting to see the pattern forming around me. My fiancé Kyle had noticed, though. "Your family only calls when they need something," he observed after Brandon had called, asking for money to cover his rent again. I defended them, of course. "That's what family is for," I insisted, though Kyle's words lingered uncomfortably in my mind. This particular Christmas was supposed to be special. Kyle and I had just gotten engaged 3 months earlier, and I was 11 weeks pregnant. We hadn't told anyone yet, saving the joyful announcement for Christmas Day, when everyone would be together. I imagined the tears, the hugs, the excited planning for the first grandchild in the family. I'd even bought a tiny stocking to hang on the fireplace as my way of sharing the news. I arrived at my parents' colonial-style home at 5 p.m. on Christmas Eve, my car trunk filled with carefully wrapped presents. I'd splurged this year, a leather briefcase for Dad, a spa weekend for Mom, high-end wireless headphones for Brandon, and the designer purse Amanda had been hinting about for months. Kyle would be joining us the next day for Christmas dinner, as he was spending Christmas Eve with his own family. The moment I walked in, I sensed something was off. My mother's hug felt stiff, and my father busied himself with taking my coat rather than meeting my eyes. Brandon gave me a quick side hug before immediately checking his phone, while Amanda offered a tight smile before returning to arranging appetizers. The usual warmth was missing, replaced by an awkward tension I couldn't explain. "Is everything okay?" I asked as I placed my gifts under the tree, noticing it looked oddly bare. "Everything's fine," my mother replied too quickly. "We're just trying a simpler Christmas this year." Little did I know how that simpler Christmas would completely unravel my understanding of my place in the family I thought I knew. After my father's shocking announcement about the no gifts decision, the room fell into an uncomfortable silence. I stood frozen, still processing his words, while my family members suddenly became very interested in their drinks and the appetizer platter. "When did we decide this?" I finally asked, forcing a light laugh to hide my confusion. I must have missed that group text. My mother fidgeted with her necklace, a nervous habit I'd seen countless times. "Oh, it was just something we discussed a while back. Nothing formal. I brought gifts for everyone," I said, gesturing to the packages I'd placed under the tree earlier. They were now sitting alone, the only presents in sight. "I didn't get the memo." "You can return them," Amanda suggested with a dismissive wave. "Or save them for birthdays." Brandon took a long sip of his eggnog. "It's not a big deal, Heather. We just thought we'd save everyone some money this year." The conversation shifted abruptly to my cousin's recent divorce, but I couldn't focus. Something wasn't adding up. If this was truly about saving money, why did everyone seem so uncomfortable? And why hadn't anyone bothered to tell me? About an hour later, I excused myself to find my phone charger in my coat pocket. As I passed through the living room toward the entryway closet, I noticed something behind the sofa: shopping bags, partially concealed by a throw blanket. Colorful tissue paper peeked out from the tops. My stomach tightened as I slowly pulled back the blanket. There were at least a dozen gift bags and wrapped packages, each with handwritten tags. To Brandon, "Love Mom and Dad." For Amanda, "Merry Christmas." To Mom, "From your favorite son." Every family member was represented except me. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually, I gathered the strength to walk back to the dining room where everyone was now seated for dinner. They all looked up as I entered, and the conversation died when they saw my face. "So," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "no gifts this year, huh?" The silence was deafening. My father cleared his throat. "Heather, it's not what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like there are presents for everyone except me hidden behind the couch." My mother's face flushed. "We just thought, since you're doing so well financially, you wouldn't mind." Mind being excluded? Mind being lied to? My voice was rising now, emotions threatening to spill over. Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Come on, Heather. It's not like this is the first time." His words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean, not the first time?" And that's when it all came pouring out. The family events I'd never been invited to. The group decisions made without my input. The separate celebrations they'd been having without me for years. "We had Thanksgiving at Amanda's place last month," my father admitted. "The official family dinner was the following weekend when you came." "You always act so superior," Amanda said, no longer hiding behind politeness. "You've always thought you were better than us anyway with your fancy job and perfect life." I looked around at the family photos on the mantle and realized there were several I'd never seen before: a beach trip from last summer, a birthday celebration for my father that I'd thought was just a small dinner with Mom. They had established a whole parallel family life that excluded me entirely. "Why?" I asked. My voice barely a whisper. "Why would you do this?" No one answered directly. Instead, they offered weak justifications and deflections. "You're always so busy. You judge us for our choices. You wouldn't have had fun anyway." The doorbell rang, Kyle arriving to pick me up as planned. One look at my face told him something was terribly wrong. I grabbed my coat and purse, tears streaming down my face. "Heather, don't be so dramatic," my mother called after me. "It's just Christmas presents." But it wasn't just about the presents. It was about years of deception, of being valued only for what I could provide while being excluded from the true family circle. As Kyle and I pulled away from the house, I could see them through the dining room window, already returning to their meal. My empty chair quickly filled by my father moving over to close the gap. as if I had never been there at all. The tiny baby announcement stocking remained in my purse, my joyful news unshared. In the car, Kyle held my hand as I sobbed, the weight of 15 years of family deception crashing down around me. What I didn't know then was that the Christmas gift betrayal was just the tip of a much larger and more disturbing iceberg. Over the next few days, Kyle became my rock as I processed the painful revelations from Christmas night. Between bouts of pregnancy, nausea, and unexpected crying jags, I began to re-examine my entire family history through this new, devastating lens. "I just can't believe I didn't see it," I said, curled up on our couch on New Year's Eve, while everyone else in Boston was celebrating. "How could I have been so blind?" Kyle sat beside me, gently stroking my hair. "You weren't blind, you were trusting. There's a difference." With his encouragement, I started to recall incidents throughout my life that suddenly made sense in this new context. Like the summer when I was 16 and stayed home to study for my SATs while the rest of the family went to Cape Cod. "It'll be boring for you," my mother had insisted. "You'll have more fun at home." I'd believed her, never questioning why my academic-minded self would be bored while my siblings wouldn't. Or the countless times I was assigned to clean up after family gatherings while everyone else continued celebrating. "You're just so good at organizing," my father would say, as if it were a compliment rather than a convenient way to exclude me. I remembered my college graduation dinner, cut short because Brandon supposedly wasn't feeling well, only to discover through a carelessly tagged social media post that they'd all gone to his favorite restaurant afterward without me. The pattern was painfully clear now. I had always been the responsible one, the dependable one, but never truly the included one. "I think we should look deeper," Kyle suggested carefully one evening. "If they've been excluding you socially, what about financially?" Reluctantly, I pulled out my laptop and began searching through old emails and bank statements. What I found made my stomach turn. 3 years ago, half of my college fund had been redirected to help Brandon start his first failed business, a sports bar that closed within 8 months. My parents had told me the money had been lost in a bad investment they'd made. "Did they ever intend to pay you back?" Kyle asked, looking over my shoulder at the transactions. "They never even mentioned it again," I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper. My cousin Jessica called after I reached out to her, her voice tight with guilt. "I'm so sorry, Heather. We were all told not to mention certain events to you. Your mom would say you were too busy or wouldn't be interested. And we just went along with it. I feel terrible now." "How long has this been happening?" I asked, dreading the answer. "As long as I can remember," she admitted. "At least since high school." That night, I found myself going through social media with new eyes. I created a fake account to view profiles I'd been blocked from and found hundreds of family photos from events I knew nothing about. A surprise 50th birthday party for my father 2 years ago. A family reunion in Maine. Weekend trips to New York City. In some photos, everyone wore matching t-shirts with Mitchell family printed on them, shirts I never received. I discovered an entire online family photo album I'd been blocked from viewing, titled Family Memories. It contained over 2,000 photos spanning 15 years, documenting a family life I had no part in. "I don't understand," I told Kyle, my voice breaking. "What did I do to deserve this?" "Nothing," he said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. But I think we need to look at your financial records more carefully. This isn't just emotional exclusion. I'm worried they've been using you." Reluctantly, I agreed. Little did I know that what we would uncover would be far worse than I imagined, a systematic financial exploitation that went beyond mere emotional betrayal. I spent the next day compiling every loan and gift I'd given my family over the years. The small amounts I'd dismiss when they couldn't pay me back. The emergencies that always seemed to coincide with my bonus payouts. The joint credit card I'd added my parents to, just for emergencies, that somehow always reached its limit. The more I dug, the clearer the picture became. I wasn't just excluded from the family circle, I was only valued for what I could financially provide. I was the family bank, not the family member. By mid-January, morning sickness had given way to a different kind of nausea, one born of betrayal and mounting evidence of financial exploitation. Sitting at our dining room table surrounded by bank statements and loan documents, I put my financial advisory skills to work uncovering the full extent of my family's deception. You might want to look at this, Kyle said, pointing to a pattern of withdrawals from my secondary savings account. These all correspond with deposits into your parents' account. He was right. Every time I had loaned money to my parents or siblings, the funds had been transferred to my parents' joint account first, even money intended for Brandon or Amanda. I started tracking the outflows from that account and found a disturbing pattern. Luxury purchases, vacations, and expenses that didn't align with my parents' claimed financial difficulties. I think I need to check something, I said, pulling up documents from a home equity line of credit I'd taken out 2 years earlier to help my parents repair their roof and HVAC system. The $40,000 had been transferred directly to their account. County records showed no building permits pulled for their address during that time. However, Amanda had purchased a brand new Audi Q5 the following week. The down payment? Exactly $38,500. They've been funneling money through your parents to your siblings, Kyle said, his voice tight with anger. And they've been doing it for years. Over the next few days, I meticulously documented every financial interaction with my family. Small loans never repaid, larger investments in my siblings' ventures that never yielded returns, credit card charges for emergencies that turned out to be vacations and luxury purchases. When I added it all up, the total was staggering. Over $200,000 over the past decade. But the worst discovery came when Kyle suggested I check for any accounts or loans I didn't recognize. Financial identity theft often happens within families, he explained grimly. A credit check revealed 2 personal loans and a business line of credit in my name that I had never applied for. The signature on the documents looked like mine, but with subtle differences, forgeries good enough to fool a bank but not the person whose name was being signed. Brandon's second restaurant, I whispered, looking at the dates on the business loan. The one he said he got investors for. The so-called investors were banks that thought they were lending to me, a financial advisor with excellent credit and a stable income. My brother had stolen my identity with my parents' knowledge, if not their active participation. My hands shaking, I picked up my phone and called my parents. My mother answered, her voice cautious. I know about the loans, I said without preamble. I know about the forgeries. A long silence followed. Then my father came on the line. Heather, you need to understand our position. Brandon needed that opportunity, and we knew you wouldn't agree. You're right. I wouldn't have agreed to commit fraud, I interrupted, my voice icy. Do you understand what this could do to my career? My reputation? My license could be revoked if this came to light. We're family, my mother said. As if that explained everything. You owe us. I owe you? For what exactly? For raising you, she snapped, her true feelings finally breaking through. For giving you everything while we struggled. Do you know how hard it's been watching you succeed, while the rest of us can barely keep afloat? I was stunned into silence. If you weren't so full of yourself, we wouldn't have needed to exclude you, my father added. Always judging us with that look of yours, thinking you're better than everyone else with your fancy job and perfect boyfriend. We were going to ask you for help with our retirement fund at Christmas, my mother admitted. But then Kyle had to come and ruin everything. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Your retirement fund? What happened to it? More silence. Then my father spoke, his voice defensive. There were some investments that didn't pan out. Brandon had a sure thing with his sports memorabilia business, which failed like all his other ventures. I finished for him. How much is left? When they finally admitted the truth, I felt physically ill. Their retirement fund, once substantial from my father's school district pension and my mother's hospital benefits, was nearly depleted. They had borrowed against it, withdrawn early despite penalties, and invested in one failed scheme after another, all while continuing to ask me for money they never intended to repay. I've spent my entire career helping clients secure their financial futures, and all this time, my own family was systematically undermining theirs and using my resources to temporarily patch the holes they were creating. This stops now, I said firmly. All of it. The lies, the manipulation, the financial exploitation. I hung up as they were still protesting, my head spinning with anger and heartbreak. This family drama has taken more turns than I ever expected. If you've ever discovered financial deception from people you trusted, drop a comment below sharing how you handled it. I'm still working through this situation myself. If this story is helping you recognize red flags in your own relationships, please hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey. We're just getting to the most shocking part, and trust me, you'll want to see how karma finally caught up with them. February arrived with bitter cold and even more bitter revelations. As my pregnancy progressed into the second trimester, the stress of the situation began to take a physical toll. I developed insomnia, spending nights staring at the ceiling while mentally calculating the years of deception and dollars stolen. My obstetrician noted my elevated blood pressure with concern during my 16-week checkup. "You need to manage your stress level," she warned, writing a note in my chart. "For your health and the baby's." Kyle was worried too. Maybe we should block their numbers for a while. He suggested one evening after I'd received a string of manipulative texts from Amanda, just until things settled down. But the messages kept coming through other channels. My parents alternated between tearful pleas and angry demands. Brandon sent emails with escalating urgency about a financial emergency that required my immediate assistance, acting as if Christmas had never happened and expecting me to simply get over it to help him once again. Amanda took a different approach, portraying herself as the wounded party on social media. Without naming me directly, she posted vague references to toxic family members who abandon you when you need them most. Mutual friends and extended family began reaching out, asking what had happened, always with the underlying assumption that I was in the wrong. Heather has been under a lot of stress at work. My mother told anyone who would listen. A convenient explanation for my sudden distance that conveniently made me the unstable one. Most painful was discovering how quickly extended family chose sides and how few chose mine. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who had seemingly enjoyed normal relationships with me for years revealed their true allegiances. Some admitted they'd been instructed not to invite me to certain gatherings over the years. Others simply ghosted me entirely. "I don't understand," I told Kyle after my favorite aunt declined my call for the third time. "These people have known me my whole life. How can they just accept my parents' version without even hearing mine?" "Because it's easier," he said gently. "And because this dynamic was established long before you realized what was happening." Just when I thought I had no allies left, my phone rang with a call from an unexpected number. It was Uncle Thomas, my father's brother, whom I hadn't seen in over a decade. Family lore held that he had fallen out with my parents over some long-ago slight and moved to Oregon. "Heather, it's your Uncle Thomas. Jessica told me what's been happening, and, well, I think we should talk." Over a video call that evening, Thomas shared his own experience of being the family outcast. Like me, he had been financially successful while my father struggled. Like me, he had been generous with his resources. And like me, he had eventually discovered he was being exploited and excluded. "They did the same thing to me 20 years ago," he said, his face solemn on my laptop screen. "Right down to the separate family gatherings I wasn't invited to." "Why didn't you ever reach out before?" I asked. He sighed heavily. "They told everyone I had done something unforgivable, embezzled from our parents, cheated my brother out of his inheritance. Horrible things. By the time I realized what was happening, I'd been completely isolated from the family. It seemed easier to start fresh somewhere new." His story chilled me to the bone, not just for its parallels to my situation, but for what it suggested about my family's multi-generational pattern of identifying a provider to exploit, then discarding them when they stopped being useful. With Kyle and Uncle Thomas supporting me, I made the difficult decision to completely cut contact with my immediate family for my own well-being and that of my unborn child. I consulted with a lawyer about the fraudulent loans and identity theft, though I stopped short of pressing charges despite her recommendation. "At minimum, we need to document everything," my attorney advised. "Even if you choose not to pursue criminal charges now, this paper trail protects you if things escalate." Things did escalate, but not in the way I expected. When my parents received the formal demand letter for repayment of funds through my attorney, their response was swift and hostile. Rather than acknowledging any wrongdoing, They threatened to disown me, apparently not recognizing the irony that they had essentially done so years ago. Brandon took the confrontation a step further, showing up at my workplace one afternoon, causing a scene in the lobby of my office building. Security footage of his aggressive behavior, pointing fingers, shouting, and ultimately having to be escorted out by security secured a temporary restraining order with surprising ease. "This isn't normal family conflict," the judge commented after reviewing the footage. "This appears to be harassment." Amanda tried a different approach, calling me in tears late one night. "You're tearing the family apart," she sobbed. "Mom and Dad could lose their house because of you." "Because of me?" I replied, incredulous. "Amanda, they've been stealing from me for years." "It wasn't stealing, it was family helping family," she insisted, repeating the same phrase my father had used. "And now you're punishing everyone because your feelings got hurt over some Christmas presents." Her deliberate minimization of the situation confirmed what Uncle Thomas had told me. This was a deeply ingrained family pattern, not a temporary lapse in judgment. My siblings had been raised to see me as a resource rather than a person with feelings and boundaries of her own. As January turned to February, and my pregnancy became increasingly visible, I began to understand that the cycle of exploitation had to end before my child was born. I couldn't allow another generation to be raised in this dysfunctional system, either as an exploited provider or as someone who believed exploiting family members was normal. The emotional toll was tremendous. Despite therapy sessions with Dr. Powell and Kyle's unwavering support, I mourned the loss of the family I thought I had. Pregnancy hormones amplified everything, turning minor disappointments into crushing blows and moments of anger into blinding rage. I worried constantly about the effect of this stress on my developing baby. Grief isn't linear, Dr. Powell reminded me during one particularly difficult session. Especially when what you're grieving isn't just a person, but an entire identity and understanding of your place in the world. I was beginning to accept that my family relationships might be permanently severed, when an unexpected message arrived that would reveal an even deeper layer of deception and provide me with an ally I never anticipated. By March, with my baby bump now prominently visible, I had developed a new appreciation for boundaries, both personal and legal. Dr. Powell, my therapist, had become an invaluable guide in navigating the emotional aftermath of my family's betrayal. Healthy boundaries aren't punishments, she reminded me during one particularly difficult session. They're necessary protections for your well-being. Kyle had been suggesting for weeks that we focus on building our future family rather than trying to salvage relationships with people who had shown such disregard for me. "The best revenge is living well," he said one evening as we assembled a crib for the nursery. "Let's put our energy into creating the kind of loving family our child deserves." After much soul-searching and consultation with both my therapist and attorney, I made a difficult decision. I would not pursue criminal charges against my family, despite clear evidence of identity theft and fraud. The potential consequences, particularly for my parents who were now in their 60s, felt too severe. Even after everything they'd done, there are other ways to hold them accountable, my lawyer assured me when I expressed my decision. We can still pursue civil remedies for the financial damage while avoiding the criminal justice system. I spent a weekend creating comprehensive documentation of every financial transaction between myself and my family members. Loan amounts, dates, purposes stated, versus actual uses of funds, promises of repayment, and evidence of forgery, all meticulously organized into a binder that told the complete story of my financial exploitation. My attorney used this documentation to draft formal demand letters for repayment. The letters outlined payment plans that were firm but not punitive, allowing for reasonable monthly installments over several years, with no interest if payments were made on time. "These terms are more than fair," she assured me. "Any court would view them as a generous compromise on your part." The response was anything but appreciative. My parents called within hours of receiving their letter, their voices shaking with rage rather than remorse. "After everything we've done for you," my father began, his voice icy, "this is how you repay us? With lawyers and threats?" "They're not threats," I replied, maintaining the calm tone Dr. Powell and I had practiced. "They're consequences for choices you made. I'm simply asking for my money to be returned." "We'll tell everyone what you're doing," my mother countered. "The whole family will know you're threatening your own parents over money while we're struggling to make ends meet." I took a deep breath. "Mom, I have bank records showing exactly where that money went. It didn't go to necessary expenses. It went to luxury purchases and Brandon's failed businesses." "We're your parents," she snapped. "We raised you. You owe us." "I owe you respect and gratitude for raising me," I agreed. "I don't owe you unlimited financial support while you exclude me from the family." The conversation ended with my father's final threat. "If you go through with this, you're no longer our daughter." The irony that they had essentially disowned me years ago without my knowledge wasn't lost on me. Brandon's response was more volatile. 2 days after receiving his demand letter, he showed up at my office building again, despite the temporary restraining order. This time, he made it past the front desk by claiming a family emergency, then created a scene on my floor, shouting about family loyalty until security arrived. The incident was captured on the building's security cameras from multiple angles, showing Brandon's aggressive posture and my colleague's concerned intervention. The footage, combined with the existing temporary order, made securing a more permanent restraining order remarkably straightforward. "Your brother has impulse control issues," observed the judge reviewing the case. "This behavior suggests he could be a genuine threat to your safety." Amanda's approach was more emotionally manipulative. She called me sobbing, claiming Brandon was threatening self-harm because of the legal pressure. "He says he'll kill himself if you don't drop this," she wailed. "Is that what you want? To destroy our brother?" Kyle, overhearing this on speakerphone, immediately contacted Brandon's ex-wife, who confirmed what we suspected. This was a manipulation tactic he had used before during their divorce proceedings. Brandon had no history of actual self-harm attempts, but had learned that threatening them was an effective way to control others. Uncle Thomas provided valuable insight into the family dynamics at play. "This is exactly what they did to me," he explained during one of our now regular video calls. "First, they try intimidation. Then they try guilt and manipulation. When those fail, they'll eventually move to offering a partial concession to make the problem go away." His prediction proved accurate. After weeks of hostility, my father called with a different tone, conciliatory, almost reasonable. "We've been thinking about your concerns," he said carefully. "Perhaps we could work out some arrangement directly, without lawyers. Maybe a smaller repayment amount, as a gesture of goodwill from our side." The offer was tempting not for the reduced financial obligation, but for the possibility of restoring some semblance of family peace. Dr. Powell helped me see it clearly. "They're offering a token concession to avoid real accountability," she noted. "Ask yourself, has anything fundamentally changed in how they view their actions or their relationship with you?" When I pressed my father on whether he and my mother acknowledged the years of deception and exclusion, his response was telling. "The past is the past, Heather. We should focus on moving forward." No apology, no genuine acknowledgement, just an attempt to escape consequences while maintaining the underlying dynamic. I declined the offer and maintained my position: full documentation and a structured repayment plan through official channels. This wasn't about punishment, it was about ending a toxic pattern once and for all. As spring approached, bringing with it the promise of new life both in the natural world and in my growing pregnancy, I began to see my situation with increasing clarity. This wasn't just about money or even about the past betrayals. It was about establishing the foundation for my child's future, a future built on honesty, respect, and genuine love rather than exploitation and conditional acceptance. Uncle Thomas put it perfectly during one of our calls. "The cycle must end with you, Heather, for your child's sake, if not for your own." What I didn't realize was that an even more unexpected ally was about to emerge, one who would provide the final pieces of evidence that would make denying the truth impossible, even for my most stubborn family members. April arrived with gentle rain showers and an unexpected email that would shift the entire family dynamic once again. The message appeared in my inbox late one Tuesday evening with the subject line, "What you need to know about your family." The sender was an email address I didn't recognize: d.wilson837@gmail.com. "Who's D. Wilson?" Kyle asked, peering over my shoulder at my laptop screen. Then it clicked. Daniel Wilson, Amanda's husband. I hesitated before opening it, half expecting another family manipulation attempt. Instead, I found a message that sent chills down my spine. Heather, I've been watching what's happening with your family, and I can't stay silent anymore. There's information you should have. I've never felt right about how they treat you, but I've been too much of a coward to speak up until now. Attached are screenshots and recordings I've gathered over the years. I understand if you don't want to hear from me, but please review these files. Daniel. The attachments included dozens of screenshots of family group chat conversations that I had never been included in. Conversations explicitly discussing ways to extract money from me while minimizing my involvement in family events. My father and Brandon discussing how to justify another loan request for a business venture they knew would fail. My mother instructing relatives not to invite me to certain gatherings, while making it clear they should still expect my financial support for family needs. Most disturbing was an audio recording from last Thanksgiving, the one I thought had been a small dinner with just my parents, but had actually been a full family gathering. In the recording, my family could be heard laughing about my absence, with Amanda joking about how they'd have to put up with Heather at the official Thanksgiving that weekend. She'll never know, my mother's voice said clearly. She believes whatever we tell her as long as we make her feel needed. I felt physically ill listening to their casual cruelty, the easy way they dismissed me when I wasn't present to provide for them. I responded to Daniel's email with one question. Why now? His reply came within minutes. Amanda is planning to ask you to co-sign on a house loan next month, despite everything that's happening. I can't be part of this anymore. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. Daniel arrived looking nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder as if expecting Amanda to appear. I've been keeping records for years, he admitted, sliding a USB drive across the table. At first, I thought I was misinterpreting things. Amanda always had explanations that made it sound reasonable to exclude you. But over time, the pattern became too obvious to ignore. Why didn't you say something sooner? I asked, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. He stared into his coffee. Cowardice, mostly. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere in family matters. And then, he hesitated. Amanda can be very convincing when she wants to be. Very manipulative. Tell me about it, I said dryly. Daniel looked up, his expression grim. There's something else you should know. The family is in serious financial trouble, worse than you realize. Brandon has a gambling problem that spiraled out of control over the past year. Your parents have been covering for him, using their home equity and retirement savings. This explained the increasingly desperate attempts to extract money from me, despite our estrangement. They weren't just trying to maintain their lifestyle, they were trying to keep Brandon afloat. The house they want us to co-sign for? It's not really for us, Daniel continued. The plan is to take out additional equity loans against it to pay off Brandon's debts. Amanda didn't tell me this directly, but I overheard her discussing it with your mother. I sat back, stunned by the depth of the deception. Does Amanda know you're telling me this? He shook his head. No. And I'm terrified about what happens when she finds out. But I can't live with myself anymore. Being part of this systematic exploitation of someone who's done nothing to deserve it. I studied him carefully. Your marriage probably won't survive this, he finished for me. I know. But some things matter more than keeping the peace. As we parted, Daniel grasped my arm. They won't stop, Heather. Not unless you make them stop. They've been doing this too long, and they don't know any other way to function as a family. The USB drive contained even more evidence than I'd expected, years of communications, financial records that had been kept from me, and, most shockingly, a folder of loan applications in my name with forged signatures that matched Brandon's handwriting. I forwarded everything to my attorney, who called me within hours of receiving it. This is more than enough for a civil case, she said. And honestly, there's enough here for criminal charges too, particularly against your brother for identity theft and fraud. But even with this damning evidence, I still hesitated to pursue the criminal route. These people had raised me, shared my blood, been part of my life for over 3 decades. Despite everything, the thought of them facing criminal penalties still felt wrong. You're more merciful than they deserve, Kyle observed that night as we reviewed the files together. Maybe, I agreed. But I need to be someone I can live with, regardless of what they've done. I forwarded selected parts of Daniel's evidence to Uncle Thomas, who responded with a heavy sigh during our next video call. History repeating itself, he said sadly. They did the same to our cousin Margaret back in the 90 seconds, before they targeted me. It's a family pattern going back at least 3 generations. How does something like this even start? I wondered aloud. From what I've pieced together, it began with our grandfather, Thomas explained. He was abandoned by his parents during the Depression and raised in a series of foster homes where he had to scheme and manipulate to survive. He taught his children that family was just another resource to be exploited. Your father and my other siblings absorbed that lesson to varying degrees. Understanding the origin didn't excuse the behavior, but it helped me see my family with something approaching compassion, damaged people perpetuating the damage done to them, trapped in destructive patterns they couldn't seem to break. With Daniel's evidence, my attorney's guidance, and the emotional support of Kyle and Uncle Thomas, I finally felt equipped to confront my family directly, not out of vengeance or retribution, but to break a toxic cycle that had continued for too long. They'll deny it all, Thomas warned, even with indisputable proof. I know, I replied. But this time, I'll be ready. By late May, my pregnancy had progressed to the point where strangers would offer me their seats on the subway and ask when I was due. July 12th, I'd reply with a smile, one hand resting protectively on my rounded belly. Despite the ongoing family drama, Kyle and I had settled on a name Lily, a symbol of rebirth and renewal. After weeks of careful preparation with my attorney, therapist, and the small circle of supporters I now trusted, I arranged a meeting with my entire family at a neutral location, a private room at a local restaurant. Kyle would attend as moral support, along with Uncle Thomas, who had flown in from Oregon specifically for this confrontation. Remember, you're not here to change their minds, Dr. Powell reminded me during our final session before the meeting. You're here to speak your truth and establish boundaries, regardless of how they respond. My parents arrived first, their expressions a mixture of wariness and indignation. Brandon came next, pointedly ignoring the restraining order by claiming the legal meeting exempted him from its restrictions. Amanda arrived last, visibly tense, with no sign of Daniel. I appreciate you all coming, I began, once everyone was seated around the large table. I've asked for this meeting because there are things that need to be said, face to face, before we can move forward in any direction. If this is about the money again, my father started. It's about much more than money, I interrupted firmly. It's about years of deception and exclusion. It's about a family pattern that has to stop. Over the next hour, I methodically presented the evidence I'd gathered. Financial records, forged documents, screenshots of conversations, audio recordings, all organized in a clear timeline that showed the systematic nature of their behavior. My family's reactions progressed through predictable stages. First, denial, then anger, then attempts to minimize and justify. Those messages are taken out of context, my mother insisted, her voice brittle. The context is quite clear, Thomas replied quietly. The same patterns, the same tactics, just a different target. Brandon's facade cracked when I played the recording of him discussing with my father how to extract more money from me for what they both acknowledged was a doomed business venture. You had no right to record private conversations, he shouted, rising from his chair. I didn't record them, I replied calmly. Daniel did. Amanda's face went pale. Daniel? My Daniel? He couldn't be part of the deception anymore, I explained, meeting her gaze steadily. He made the choice to do what was right, even knowing what it might cost him. As the evidence mounted, the denials became increasingly feeble. When presented with the forged loan documents in his handwriting, Brandon exploded in rage, knocking over his water glass and pointing an accusatory finger at our parents. You said this was legal. You said it was just a formality because she'd approve it anyway. Keep your voice down, my father hissed. But the damage was done. The united front had cracked, revealing the individual self-interest beneath. Is it true? I asked my mother directly. Did you know about the forged documents? Her silence was answer enough. The most difficult moment came when I addressed their complete depletion of their retirement fund, not through legitimate needs, but through enabling Brandon's gambling addiction and maintaining a facade of prosperity they couldn't afford. We had no choice, my mother finally admitted, tears streaming down her face. Brandon was in trouble with some very dangerous people. What were we supposed to do? Let him get hurt? You could have gotten him help, I suggested. Real help, not just money to perpetuate the problem. You don't understand what it's like to have children, my father countered weakly. You'll do anything to protect them. I placed my hand on my belly. I understand more than you think. And I know I would never teach my child that exploitation is love. By the end of the meeting, the family dynamics had shifted visibly. My parents, once so confident in their moral authority, sat deflated before the evidence of their actions. Brandon, exposed as both victim and perpetrator of the family's dysfunction, had stormed out after threatening self-harm, a manipulation tactic that no longer worked on me. Amanda remained, tears streaming silently down her face as she finally confronted the reality of her participation in years of deception. What happens now? She asked quietly, when everyone else had fallen silent. I slid folders across the table, one for each family member. These are formal repayment agreements, drawn up by my attorney. They outline payment schedules based on what each of you can reasonably afford. They also establish clear boundaries for our relationship moving forward. And if we refuse? My father asked, though his tone lacked conviction. Then I'll pursue all available legal remedies. I replied evenly, including criminal charges for fraud and identity theft where applicable. I wasn't bluffing, and they knew it. The evidence was too substantial, the consequences too severe to dismiss. I never meant for things to go this far, my mother whispered, looking suddenly older than her years. I believe you, I said, surprised to find I genuinely did. But intent doesn't erase impact. One by one, they signed the agreements not out of remorse, I understood, but out of necessity. The family system had functioned on exploitation for so long that genuine accountability felt like a foreign language none of them quite spoke. As we prepared to leave, Amanda approached me tentatively. Do you think, is there any way we could ever be a real family again? I looked at her, my sister, my childhood playmate, someone I had loved despite everything, and gave her the most honest answer I could. I don't know. That depends on whether you're willing to build something new, based on respect and honesty, rather than trying to return to what was comfortable but toxic. She nodded slowly, understanding that I was offering a possibility, not a promise. As Kyle and I walked out, Uncle Thomas beside us, I felt no triumph or vindication, only a deep sense of having done what was necessary, both for myself and for the child growing within me. The family I had grown up with was irrevocably changed. The relationships might never recover, or they might transform into something healthier with time and effort. Either way, I had broken the cycle that had trapped generations of my family in patterns of exploitation and deception. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could give my daughter. 6 months later, I sat in a hospital room cradling my newborn daughter, Lily Eleanor Mitchell Henderson. Born on July 10th, 2 days before her due date, she had arrived after 20 hours of labor, with Kyle holding my hand through every contraction and pushing session. She has your eyes, Kyle said softly, perched on the edge of the hospital bed beside us. And hopefully your patience, I replied with a tired smile. The room was filled with flowers and gifts from friends and colleagues, but notably absent were any members of my birth family. The decision to keep Lily's birth private from them had been difficult but necessary. I wanted these first precious days untainted by the tension and hurt that still lingered. In the months since the confrontation, my family relationships had evolved in ways I never expected. The repayment agreements had been honored, though not consistently. My parents sent monthly checks through their attorney, often late but eventually arriving. Brandon had made only 2 payments before disappearing from town, allegedly to a gambling rehabilitation program in Arizona, though I had my doubts. The biggest surprise had been Amanda. 3 weeks after our confrontation, she had called to tell me she and Daniel were separating. He was right, she admitted, her voice raw with emotion. About everything. I just couldn't see it. Over the following months, she had begun her own therapy journey, slowly untangling her participation in the family's toxic patterns. Our relationship remained tentative text messages and occasional coffee meetings rather than deep sisterly intimacy, but it was honest in a way it had never been before. My parents had made awkward attempts at reconciliation, sending cards on my birthday and asking to be part of their grandchild's life. I maintained firm boundaries, requiring acknowledgement of specific behaviors rather than vague apologies, a standard they still struggled to meet. "I don't think they know how," Uncle Thomas observed during one of his now regular visits. "They've never seen healthy accountability modeled." Thomas had become an unexpected blessing throughout this journey, stepping into the role of supportive elder that my parents had never truly filled. He had moved from Oregon to Boston to be closer to us, renting an apartment just 20 minutes from our new home in a different neighborhood, a fresh start we'd made 2 months after the confrontation. My career had thrived despite the personal turmoil. The firm had made me a partner ahead of schedule, impressed by my handling of a major client acquisition during my maternity leave. The promotion came with flexibility that allowed me to balance new motherhood with work in a way I hadn't thought possible. As I gazed down at Lily's perfect face, I reflected on the separate peace I had made with each family member, each on my own terms. With Brandon, it meant acceptance that a relationship might never be possible. With my parents, it meant limited contact with clear expectations. With Amanda, it meant cautious rebuilding on a foundation of honesty rather than obligation. 1 week after returning home from the hospital, an unexpected letter arrived from Amanda, handwritten on stationery I recognized from our childhood. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about patterns," she wrote, "about how we become what we're taught to be unless we consciously choose differently. I'm trying to choose differently now, and I want to thank you for showing me it's possible. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday Lily will know she has an aunt who loves her, even if she had to learn how to love properly." It was the first genuine expression of remorse from any family member, not centered on their feelings or needs, but on actual accountability and growth. Meanwhile, Daniel had become an unlikely friend, his integrity in ultimately doing the right thing earning my respect. After finalizing his divorce from Amanda, he had moved to Chicago for a fresh start, but we remained in contact, bound by the strange intimacy that comes from weathering a family storm together. The boundary I had established with my parents remained firm despite their occasional attempts to circumvent it. They had asked to meet Lily several times, but I insisted on seeing consistent behavior change before introducing my daughter to people who had shown such disregard for healthy relationships. "Your boundaries aren't punishment," Kyle reminded me one evening when I felt the weight of guilt. "They're protection for you and for Lily." Brandon's continued hostility contrasted sharply with Amanda's efforts at growth. He had sent several angry emails blaming me for the family's fracturing, each one strengthening my resolve to keep him at a distance from my daughter. The Christmas after Lily's birth marked a poignant milestone. Instead of the tense family gathering that had revealed so much betrayal the previous year, Kyle and I hosted a warm celebration in our new home, attended by Uncle Thomas, a few close friends, and after much consideration, Amanda. As I watched her carefully holding Lily, her expression a mixture of joy and regret, I realized that forgiveness wasn't a single decision but a process unfolding over time. Some relationships could be rebuilt with enough honesty and effort. Others might need to remain in the past. "She looks like you," Amanda said softly, tracing Lily's tiny fingers with her own. "She has that same determined expression." "Good," I replied. "She'll need determination to forge her own path." Later, as snow fell gently outside our living room window, I held Lily while Kyle took photos for her first Christmas album. Uncle Thomas raised a glass in a toast. "To breaking cycles," he said, his eyes meeting mine with understanding, "and to building something better in their place." That night, after everyone had gone and Lily slept peacefully in her crib, I sat by the window watching snowflakes dance in the streetlight glow. The journey from last Christmas to this one had been painful beyond measure, but I wouldn't change it. Every difficult step had led to this moment of peace, not perfect, not complete, but genuine. The Christmas present I had given myself was freedom from toxic expectations and the courage to create a new family legacy, one based on genuine love rather than obligation or exploitation. Looking at my sleeping daughter, I made a silent promise that she would never know the pain of conditional acceptance or manipulation disguised as love. True family, I had learned, wasn't defined by blood but by consistent love and respect. Some of those connections had survived the storm of truth. Others hadn't. Both outcomes were okay. As I joined Kyle in bed, his arm wrapping protectively around me, I felt a sense of contentment that had been missing for most of my life. The family pattern had been broken. The cycle had ended with me. And in its place, something healthier and more beautiful had begun. If my story has resonated with you in any way, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family dynamics and boundaries in the comments below. Have you ever had to make difficult choices to break unhealthy cycles? What wisdom would you share with others facing similar situations? Your insights might help someone who's struggling with their own family karma right now. If you found value in my journey, please hit the like button and subscribe to support more stories about healing and growth. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries with family. Thank you for witnessing my story. Sometimes sharing our truths is the first step toward healing. Wishing you all the courage to create the healthy relationships you deserve.